Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and thank you to our esteemed witnesses for appearing before the committee. I'm actually glad that we have your expertise and insight to highlight just how fundamental the American Rescue Plan has been to our country's pandemic recovery. When my constituents sent me here to Congress, they expected me to deliver results. They sent me here with the dual mission this past 2 years of crushing the COVID pandemic and implementing an equitable recovery for working Americans. So I'm proud to say that I voted to pass the American Rescue Plan in the moment that it was needed. Not one of my colleagues, my Republican colleagues on the other side, voted for that bill. What was their plan to crush the pandemic? What was their plan to help small businesses and entrepreneurs? What was their plan to help lift 50% of families out of poverty through the child tax credit? And what was their plan to help state and local governments who have been at the forefront of providing the response to crush the virus and to help with our economic recovery? When I talk to my mayors in my local governments, they tell me they use that money for what? Public safety. The only ones to defund law enforcement were the Republicans who voted no on the American Rescue Plan. That's the facts. Now, I didn't come here to defend every program. That's not what I came to Congress to do. I came to make sure that the federal programs that Congress approves and that the administration implements works for my constituents. And there are areas that need to be improved. But when you don't even have a plan to address how you would crush the pandemic or ensure economic recovery that's equitable, I think that's a major problem. Now, by supporting America's entrepreneurs, the American Rescue Plan ensured that our country would be ready to grow when COVID was finally crushed. Would you agree, Dr. Coronado, that the American Rescue Plan positioned our economy on the path for growth by mitigating the worst impacts of the pandemic? And could you please speak to how aggressive fiscal policy may have lessened the long-term scarring effects we often see after severe downturns?
Yes, undeniably, the American Rescue Plan and the fiscal support helped the economy recover even through the pandemic and now more as we move beyond it into the endemic phase. And I think that you're putting your finger on the most important aspect, which is the support to the labor market and getting people back to work when they are able and ready to do so. It did take, we did lose participation. And now that is roaring back. It's roaring back. And that is because people now are able and ready, and they are actually able to come in and command higher wages and better situations, more full-time work. So there's a lot of things about the labor market that you highlight that, last recovery, we didn't do that. And people were out of the labor force for years, many years. We didn't see that recovery happen until 7 years into the expansion.
And it's disproportionately on women and people of color, which
Absolutely.
I think also speaks to where's your plan to help with an equitable recovery for every community. Now, one of the challenges that I continue to hear from people in my district is the cost of living, affordable housing, with the cost of rent on the rise. People do still need help, and that's why I applaud my home state of Nevada for allocating funding from the American Rescue Plan, which will now invest $500 million directly into affordable housing. Now, those solutions can take many different forms, but Mayor Williams, will you please discuss the many ways in which municipalities have used ARP funding to help constituents with essentials, such as keeping food on the table or a roof over their head?
Yes, sir, and thank you for that question. That was something that was so important to my community. Certainly, we had people who were at risk of evictions. We certainly used the funding to be able to stave those evictions off by helping with rental assistance, as well as mortgage assistance and utility assistance, something as meaningful as being able to have your water service. Those are the things that we focused on, but also assisting folks with being able to have money to go to the grocery store. Those were some of the things we have been dealing with. And now this issue around access to internet, that was a big one in my community because many of my families had to drive their kids to the local McDonald's to sit on the parking lot to be able to receive access to Wi-Fi. Those were things we were focusing on to make sure that we assisted families to be able to pay for their internet bill if they had a service. But thanks to this affordable high-speed internet service that's coming, many families will receive that. But the everyday support, but the everyday need to keep families alive, those were the things we were focusing on in our communities.
Well, thank you for focusing on the American people. I yield back.